Renee is our campus minister at Northern Kentucky University. She just started officially in that role in June, but has been affiliated with the ministry for a few years now, serving as the board chair, and it's just a natural place, a natural selection, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but for Renee to become the campus minister when the previous one moved to another state, and so Northern Kentucky has done what we think is kind of the impossible. Um, Here is a commuter school. Don't know if you know a lot about Northern Kentucky, but it's a commuter school, primarily just a few dorms on campus, um, and so we have asked the question and wondered, is viable ministry, fruitful ministry, even possible at Northern? And with David, previous campus minister, and then now Renee, we're seeing that it's not just possible, but it is certainly a reality. And so they have taken that ministry from about 3 years ago. There were 2 students, and now they are averaging 35 to 40 on a regular basis. And the fruit that is growing from that has been incredible. So very thankful for Renee and for her willingness to share with us kind of the question of the church right now, and that is, how do we reach young adults? Who are these young adults that are, you know, not in our churches, and how do we come alongside? We intentionally named this webinar "How to Minister with Young Adults" instead of often we say how to minister to young adults. Young adults want to be in ministry with us, not to only be the participants. So anyway, I know Renee has a lot to share with us, and so want to let her have the time that she needs, but let's begin with a word of prayer. So Lord Jesus, we come to you again on this evening and thank you for your goodness to us. You've been so faithful to us on this Monday, and have revealed yourself in many different ways to us. And we are so grateful for your love and your grace and your mercy that you've extended to us. Lord, I pray that you would use this time that we share together to empower us, to equip us so that we are your leaders in your church. We pray for our young people, and we ask, Lord, that you would show to us how we can come alongside them, how we can be in ministry with them. I just pray you would be with Renee as she speaks with us, and she would be a source of wisdom, that you would just be with us during this time. I pray all of this. All right, Renee, I'm going to have it.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, as Tammy said, I'm Renee, and I'm actually serving in 2 different capacities in the Northern Kentucky district right now. But I've been working with youth and young adults in various capacities for about 12 years. Currently, I am the director for the Wesley Foundation at NKU, which means that I do minister to some of your college students. And we have worship and Bible study every week, and but we do experience some of the same issues as most churches with reaching out to the young adults on our campus. But we'll get to that in a little bit later. I also serve on the district staff up here as a coordinator for youth and young adult ministries in Northern Kentucky. It's a new position, so we're still working out exactly what I'll be able to do for our churches. But at this point in time, I'm kind of a resource person. In the near future, we're hoping to put together like some trainings and things like that. And then obviously this webinar is part of that job as well. But I'm thrilled to be with you all tonight, and I thank you for your time in being here. Sorry, Brandon, I just saw your comment. So Tammy asked me to be here with you today to talk specifically about young adult ministry. And this is an area of ministry that I feel our churches could really use some extra help with. I've been a young adult in the church, and I work with young adults in the church, and I think there are a few reasons why this age group is kind of dissatisfied with the church right now, and we have a hard time reaching out to them. So tonight I want to take you through some of the mindsets and the values you're going to run into when considering starting a young adult ministry. Hopefully I can give you some tips that will get you thinking about the best ways that you can start reaching young adults in your communities. But you are the one who will be able to discern how what I am telling you fits in your community. You are the one who knows your community best. It's all about knowing your community and deciding what is going to work best for you, kind of what your best practices will be. So my initial points are going to be kind of general, but please feel free to ask me to be more specific if you're wondering about something, and I'll try to answer the best I can. So I want to put a brief disclaimer in here before we really get going. Some of what I have to say tonight is going to sound negative, and it might sound like I'm bashing the church, and that's not what I'm after. But there are some serious stumbling blocks in the path of ministry with young adults that have built up over time. And there are some hard truths that I think we need to face as a church body. And there are some stories from my students that have really saddened me about the way that they feel that the church has kind of let them down. So please try to hear them as a way for us to grow and a practice just in being aware of what our words and our actions can do. Obviously, I love the church. I've been a pastor for 5 years now. I grew up in the UMC. I love it. I want to see it succeed in its mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, but we have some things to overcome. So know that I love you, but some of this might be a little hard to hear. But first we need to kind of establish what we're talking about when we say young adult ministry. We tend to want to think that young adults are just college students, but that's not 100% accurate. The United Methodist Book of Discipline defines young adults as anyone between the ages of 18 to 35, which is a humongous age range. For a few reasons. It's a huge jump in maturity, in development, and in background and in life experience. For instance, I'm 31, so I'm technically a young adult. But with things changing so rapidly over the years, my childhood and my background is vastly different from the 18-year-olds who started college this year. So I'm in the same age group as the students that I minister to. But I would say that we have pretty different experiences and needs when it comes to our church families. So in this age range, you are going to have a lot of different life experience. I think is partly what makes ministry so hard to this age group. Life changes very rapidly during these years. You have college students, more and more of whom are moving away for college, so they're away from their home church and their home community. And if they're living on campus, it is really easy for them to stay on campus. Colleges make it really easy for their students to just never leave campus. And so college students tend to get disconnected from the church. And again, I'll get kind of into a little bit more detail with that later. But they live in this kind of bubble of higher education, and they're immersed in their own world. College is really an experience like no other. But then you also have the young adults who are college age, but they have elected not to go to college for whatever reason. And that's fine. These folks are usually, they're going straight into a job. Some of them take time off school before they start college. Some might be attending vocational schools. Some may not be pursuing any type of continuing education. And this comes with its own set of challenges. They're dealing with a lot of judgment about not attending college. College has become almost an expectation to a lot of people. So if you elect not to go, people can get kind of weird about it. So just embrace these folks. But the young adult range also goes past our college students. A lot of young people who pursue postgraduate degrees tend to at least get their master's in this time frame. And I do know a few PhD students who are under 35. And this is kind of a rising trend in young adults. They're doing a lot of school right off the bat for a few reasons. But many young adults choose to go ahead and complete some form of postgraduate work in their late 20s or early 30s, which means that most of the time they're putting off getting married and having families, and they're still immersed in this academic life. Most of them are balancing school and a job, which means they can sometimes be iffy about commitments. I was one of those people for a little while. I went to school full-time and I worked full-time. Be patient with these folks. I beg you, and again, just embrace them where they are and just come alongside them. But this brings us to our next kind of general group that we find within young adults, and these are the single young adults. These can be people who maybe they are looking for a long-term relationship and are just not in one. But there is also a rise in young adults who are choosing to remain single for a while. And this is the group that I think the church struggles with the most because we aren't real sure what to do with them. We know what to do with people with families. We know what to do with kids. We maybe kind of know what to do with college students, but we really don't know what to do with the people who are kind of in between that. So we're not real sure what to do with them. And I just kind of want to gently point you back to the United Methodist Book of Discipline at this point. In our social principles, we do affirm singleness. We think it's okay to be single. And so I would just ask that you please affirm that and how you talk to and minister with single people. They are complete and valuable creations of God without a significant other. I know you mean well, but a lot of single young adults are really put off by the church community because church people tend to ask about marriage and babies a lot. Don't ask them to explain their decision to be single, please, I am begging you. I asked my students about their experience with being single in the church, and one told me a story about a Father's Day that he was visiting at a church, and he walked in and they had this little gift for all of the men, all of the fathers, and he wasn't upset with having the gift for the fathers, hang with me. But they started to hand him one, and he said, well, thank you, but I'm not a father, please keep this for someone else who is. And the church member who was handing them out kind of put it back into his hands and said, well, the Bible commands that we be fruitful and multiply, so go out and get to work. And I know that that church member meant no harm and that it was meant as a joke, but my student did not hear it that way, and I really kind of doubt that he's ever going to walk back into that church again. He's told his friends about it, they were horrified by it, and it kind of affirms this narrative that young adults, especially single young adults, have, that they need to be married and have children to have value in the church. And that is not true. Again, please just embrace your young adults in whatever forms they present themselves as whole and full members of the body of Christ. But in this same vein, single young adults may or they may not have children. And if they do have children, it does not always mean that they were teenage mothers or fathers, although this is certainly true in some cases. But also with our military active right now, I have encountered widows who are in their late 20s and early 30s. I've met divorced people in this age range. So singleness comes in many varieties. And any of these experiences are painful in their own ways, and they come with a lot of baggage. So again, just embrace your young adults in whatever forms they present themselves as just whole and full members of the body of Christ. Now, even though there is a rise in single people, there are still young couples who also may or may not have children. And I will again please ask that you try to keep the baby talk to a minimum. I know churches love babies. I love babies. I love holding babies. But infertility is very much a reality in young couples. I think it might actually be on the rise. And I've known people who have experienced it and who have kind of fallen away from the church because of the talk that goes around that. And there's a lot of pain around the talk of families. And we're communicating, again, this message to people without kids when we start talking about kind of the importance and value of having them. They hear it as that they're kind of not valued without a family. And they just have a lot of struggles, or they're very firm in their personal decisions with regards to their family. And so the way young adults kind of hear this talk about, oh, you need to be married or have a baby or anything like that, essentially they kind of hear it as, we're glad you're in the church, but man, it would be a lot better and we would be a lot more happy to see you if you had a kid or two. And young adults will not stay where they do not feel valued for who they are as individuals first. So again, embrace your young adults in whatever forms they present themselves and welcome them as full and complete members of the body of Christ. Now, this demographic that we've just kind of gone over very quickly probably sounds really confusing and overwhelming, and it is. This is not only a huge age range, you have a lot of different life experience possibilities in there, and any combination of these life experiences can kind of be going on at the same time. I've met college students who are single parents. I've met college students who are married parents. A graduate student who was a single mom because her husband was killed in Iraq. I know a young couple where one of them has a law degree and the other did not complete college. So you can have any combination of these kind of experiences in your young adult demographic. And more than anything, just be aware of that. We cannot assume that everyone who is 30 years old has remotely the same story. Ministry to young adults can be really hard, but it is not impossible. And please don't hear it as that I'm saying you need to start little subgroups for every single demographic of young adult out there. That's not what I'm saying. I would say actually that is not what young adults are after at all when it comes to their church ministries. I just want you to be aware that you're dealing with a lot if you decide to take on this type of ministry. And please just honor and respect the stories that you hear. Every person I have encountered has a journey unique to them and a story that God can and will use for his kingdom. And I promise you, it's going to be worth it. So, yeah, we just don't always know where to start. Because we often want to group people off by life experience in our small group ministries in our churches. With adults, we tend to have things kind of grouped off this way. We have women's and men's groups. We have groups for widows and groups for military and things like that. But again, young adults are all over the spectrum. So it can be hard to get a good target on what would be relevant to them. And again, we'll kind of get back around to this in a little while, but I will reiterate, don't feel like you have to focus in on a specific subgroup of young adult unless there is a real need in your community for something so specific. For instance, if you're in close proximity to Fort Knox, for example, which I was for a little while, you might want to think about reaching out to military spouses or something like that. But in my experience, yes, young adults value having people around them who have similar experiences, but they also crave community with those who have different backgrounds. So specialized small groups are not always necessary. If young adults are interested in a specialized group, age probably won't matter to them as much in those cases. We also tend to make a lot of assumptions about young adults, and many of those assumptions tend to not be very positive. Please don't voice them. Don't talk in church about how millennials are selfish and flaky and lazy. Remember what we just talked about. You're dealing with a lot of life in this age range. You're dealing with a lot of changes in technology just from the way they were even 20 years ago. And I really don't think that any of those generalizations are true. It's just the way people think about certain things has changed, and we don't always understand why or how it changed. Young adults communicate differently than previous generations. Their thoughts around family are different. Their thoughts around kids are different. It's just a different way of thinking that I think other generations don't have a good grasp on because that just hasn't been their experience. So because mindsets are kind of shifting, young adults tend to confuse the church. The idea of what it means to attend something regularly is changing. There's some research out there that says young adults think of regular attendance as being about twice a month. The ideas around giving financially are changing. The ideals that are important to young adults are changing. Their thoughts about the church are changing, and that is confusing because it kind of makes us feel out of touch. And we tend to want to kind of hang on to what we've always done in the past, even though it might not really be working anymore. So going back to the assumptions part of our talk here, we sometimes think that young adults will come around to our way of thinking kind of once they get settled into life. And I really don't think that's true because, again, mindsets are shifting, lifestyles are shifting, and we have to stay in touch with what's going on with these folks if we want our ministry with them to be successful. We are going to have to rethink the way we do church life together. if we want this generation to plug into our faith communities. But most importantly, we have to embrace our young adults in whatever forms they present themselves and welcome them as complete and full members of the body of Christ. I hope you sense my theme there. So I'm going to take a quick break and just say any questions so far about just the demographic of 18 to 35, anything that we've gone over real quick. I'm going to have a couple of breaks for questions in here. And feel free to ask them anytime as well. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So, I don't see anyone typing, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. But again, feel free to ask a question anytime. So how on earth do we go about unlocking the code of young adult ministry? There is one thing that I will stress above everything else. And I have found this to be successful in college ministry in particular, but it is true in most contexts. Building genuine relationships with people in your community is going to be your biggest asset in young adult ministry. You cannot announce that you are going to start up a young adult ministry in your church next week and think that it will succeed with no real foundation behind it. Sorry, I went a slide too early there. That's a joke that you'll get in a couple minutes. But if you want young adults to come into your congregation, you have to get out there and you have to meet them. And this takes time and it takes people power. But there are a few ways you can go about doing this if you're starting from scratch. If you already have some young adults in your church, they are going to be your biggest asset in bringing others in. Because peer-to-peer communication is the most influential factor in the lives of many young adults. They talk to each other and they listen to each other. But you have to empower the young adults that are in your communities right now to reach out and to give them a reason to invite others in. Peer-to-peer communication also is only influential if there is an existing relationship between the two people. I will say another thing to remember is to stop holding all of your events in your church building. Get out of your church building. If the young adults are not already plugged into your congregation, they are not going to attend a Bible study in your church building. Chances are, as much as you may not like to hear this, young adults in most communities do not know the difference between the churches in their towns, even if they live next door or down the street from one. If the church is not already part of their lives, telling them to come into a church building right off the bat is probably not going to work very well. But they do know the local hangouts. And so be the church in your community. This strategy works for church planters. Church planting is all about getting to know a community. So if you start a Bible study with some young couples in your church, hold your study in your local coffee shop. There's actually an Episcopalian church in Louisville that holds a study called Pub Theology, and they reserve a space at a local pub-style restaurant each week, and they have dinner and they talk about the Bible, and it's actually been pretty successful for them. But look around at where people are congregating in your community and find a way to meet them there without being creepy about it. If you don't have young adults in your church right now, start frequenting the places where they are. For college ministry, I do not work in my office. I don't write my sermons there. I don't prep for Bible study there. I am almost never there. It's kind of a storage space and where I go if I have a planned meeting with someone. I work at the Starbucks on campus. I eat in the campus dining area. When I was the associate pastor at another church in the conference, I was almost never in my office. I worked in the coffee shop in downtown Newport all the time. I talked to the wait staff in restaurants that I would frequent. I took coworkers to my regular spots for meetings. Make yourself visible. Get to know the people in your community. Genuinely get to know them and give them the opportunity to get to know you. Be open with them about who you are, and they will return the favor. And this is not entirely the pastor's job. There is some research out there that says people are more likely to begin attending a church regularly if they have 5 points of contact within that church. The pastor is only one of them. Any outreach is going to be a whole church project. but you all need to be on the same page as to why you are doing outreach to young adults. And the only acceptable answer, as far as I am concerned, about why we do ministry to young adults is because you want this age group to come into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and grow in their faith through connection with your church. You have to genuinely care about them and their personal development as Christians. Being genuine is a huge part of young adult ministry. If you are trying to get to know the young adults in your area for any reason other than genuinely caring about them, they will sense it and they will not respond. I will repeat this. If you are looking to start a young adult ministry for any reason other than genuinely caring about them, it is probably not going to work. This includes wanting young adults in your church because your congregation is getting old and you need them to run your ministries for them, or you need them to run your ministries for you, because you feel like you need to start a young adult ministry to be a good church, because you want your church to be open in 20 years. Those are not reasons that express that you care for your young adults. Those are reasons that express that you care for your church, not their personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I honestly think that the biggest blockade to young adult ministry is that we come across as desperate. We want young adults in the church for all kinds of reasons, except that we want them to come into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and grow in that faith through the support of a church community. When we mob young adults at the door and say things like, "We are so glad you're here. We need young blood in our church. Do you want to be on a committee? Do you want to revive our children's ministry? We need a youth leader," without ever offering them a chance to grow in their own discipleship, we are communicating that we really kind of only want them there to keep the church open because the church is important to us. I don't know how else to say this besides this. I spent many years as a single person. Desperation is a turnoff. I could tell when a guy was interested in dating because he felt that he should be married and wanted to rush into things because he felt like he should, and when someone wanted to genuinely be in a relationship because they valued me. Being part of any community or any group of people is no different. If you give off the vibe that you are desperate for young adults because you are scared that your church will close without them, your ministry will not be nearly as successful as it could be. And the young adults that you do get are going to have a Messiah complex because they will think that they are the salvation of the church. Build genuine relationships with your young adults. Get to know them. Literally meet them where they are and go from there. Invite them into a relationship in Christ that can be nurtured through your church community. Young adult ministry cannot be about getting bodies in the pews. They will sense it. Any questions so far about anything that we've gone over? Okay. So now that we're kind of in this mindset about building relationships with our young adults, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you might encounter in the lives of young people and how to avoid some of the pitfalls when we go about starting to get to know the young people in our community. And so I want to kind of visit a few of the assumptions that we make and talk about a few things that I've heard people say about young adults that might be doing a lot more harm than we think they are. So first, please don't refer to young adults as the future of the church. Yes, they are, in the sense that we hope that they will be around after us, but they are part of the present ministry of the church body. I've seen a lot of churches that talk about how young adults are the future of the church, but they don't let their young adults shape the future of the church. I was told all the time when I was a teenager that I was the future of the church, but I discovered that when I was suddenly considered the present of the church body, that no one had taught me how to lead. No one had equipped me to be the present, to be the leaders of the church. Don't hold your young people in reserve. Let them explore their gifts and their graces. Now, I do want to reiterate that when a young adult walks into your church for the first time, please don't bombard them with invitations to serve on every committee. When you build relationships with your young people, though, you will learn about their passions and about their gifts. Don't be afraid to offer them leadership in areas where they demonstrate passion and giftedness. They are hungry for those kind of opportunities. And one other caution in this way of doing things: if you put them in a leadership position, let them lead. If you want young adults invested in the church, you have to let them help shape the future of the church that they are investing in. And this means that they may want to do things differently than you currently do things. And so a big question to honestly ask in your church is, are you going to be okay with that? Another assumption that we kind of make: having a young adult ministry is not going to be the salvation of your church. Your church family, your church atmosphere, how you relate to your community, and your process of creating disciples of Jesus Christ is what will keep your church thriving, not just the presence of young people. Again, if you regularly communicate that your young people are the salvation of the church, you are going to have some young people with a Messiah complex. You don't want messiahs. You already have one of those. You want disciples who are going to make disciples. That is what the community of the church exists for. Now, I kind of want to address one final pitfall of involving young adults in your church, and this kind of has specifically to do with college students. Often our youth graduate into college and we just keep them in the youth group because we don't really have anywhere else for them. College students should not be in your youth group. Let me repeat. College students should not be in your youth group. In all honesty, I would be wary of them leading your youth group for a few reasons. One, it's a violation of safe sanctuaries for college students to be in charge of your high schoolers because of the 4-year age rule. Leaders are supposed to be 4 years older than the oldest potential student that could show up. But second, college students are in a different phase of life than high school students. And it's a dramatic change that they have to adjust to. It is a different world, and they need to be in a place where they can live into that in their faith life as well. College ministry does not have to be boring or dry or anything like that, but it cannot be your youth ministry. We tend to want to lump young adults all kind of into the youth category, and as we saw earlier, it is way too large of an age range to do that. Plus, not all young adults are going to be interested in participating in youth ministry. If they are, that's great, but don't let that be the only discipling that they receive. I have had a few people kind of push back on me for this, that you should not have your college students in your youth ministry, and it's ultimately for you to decide what is best for your church. But just consider this. If your college students still want to be hanging out with your high schoolers and living into the same level of faith as your high schoolers, and you are willing to let them stay there, what are we doing for the spiritual journey for our young adults? We have to challenge our young people to grow and to lead in arenas other than with the youth group. I will maintain your college students should not be with your youth. If you have some recent high school graduates, now would be a good time to think about what you can do for them to encourage them on their way. Any questions at this point? We're going to start connecting some dots and getting into some practicalities for your church setting. But like I said, we're kind of deconstructing some misconceptions about young adults before we can really start moving into how to do solid ministry with our young people. So any questions at this point? Okay. So let's move into a little bit more stuff that you may hear as you're getting to know your young people. These are going to be some general mindset points to look for as you're starting to build these relationships in your community, to kind of give you a heads up to as you start thinking creatively about your ministry and how young adults might perceive your church. So first, let's talk about money, the dreaded topic. But I really think that understanding the attitude of young adults toward money, and specifically giving, is a concern for most churches. I'm going to be upfront with you. College students don't have money, so we're going to focus more on early 20s into early 30s, or the dreaded millennial attitudes towards finances. So something to understand when it comes to communicating with millennials. Most of the people in this age range are coming out of college or postgraduate programs. There are exceptions, but most have some sort of college education. And with this comes student loans. This generation coming out of college is saddled with a lot of debt right out of the gate. I'll be upfront with you. I've been paying on my student loans for 5 years now, and I've paid off one of 6. I had scholarship money, and I still owe more on my student loans than I do on the loan for my car. And I'm better off than a lot of my friends. We owe a lot of money on student loans, and we're really not starting out in jobs where we're in a position to pay them off quickly. Now, this is not to say that millennials are dirt poor and are not going to give money. Millennials are actually one of the more generous demographics, despite their financial hardships. In 2014, it was estimated that 84% of millennials, or young adults who are aged 22 to 35, gave to charity. And they are the most likely to volunteer their time. Millennials are very generous with their time. However, this is the bad news for churches. Millennials are very generous to specific missions and causes, not institutions. Millennials tend to be mistrustful of institutions for a few reasons. First, given that they tend to be in a great deal of debt, they do have limited money to give, and they are interested in giving where they feel that their money will do the most good. They will thoroughly research a cause before they give to it, and they demand transparency in the organizations that they give to. They are savvy givers when it comes to finances. So if you have missions or specific ministries in your church, young adults will be more likely to support those than giving to the general fund. In the past, many corporations, the big businesses, have held big fundraisers for stuff like United Way and March for Dimes and kind of your big charities. Millennials are much less likely to give through big organized campaigns like that. They are grassroots givers. They talk to each other about causes and missions that ignite their passion. This can be your biggest asset or your biggest downfall in involving young adults with your ministry. Young adults talk to each other. Social media plays a huge role in this, and they hold sway over their peers. Again, peer-to-peer influence is a huge factor in young adult thinking. This works for giving. It also works for growing your ministry. If you build a ministry that is genuinely about your young adults, they will talk to their, I have hiccups all of a sudden. They will talk to their friends about it, and they will invite people to come. And this is kind of a double-edged sword, because if you communicate a message other than that we care about who you are and about your spiritual growth, they will talk to their friends about that as well. Young adults talk to each other, and they will listen to each other. Like I said before, young adults are also more generous with their time than any other age group. They are more likely to volunteer. 70% reported volunteering regularly in 2014. But they are busy, and they do have busy schedules. So they want specific causes that they feel are doing the most good. Millennials want to make a positive impact in their communities. They are happy to give their time, but it needs to be for something specific, for a specific cause. So if your church doesn't have much going on outside of Sunday morning service, you may have a hard time attracting young adults to your church and retaining them. Now, I do not think that young adults are against the concept of tithing in general, but they need to know why it's important. And also, I've met some young adults who kind of think of the concept of tithing as not necessarily tithing to the church, but tithing to God. And so they consider contributions that they make to other charities that they deem worthwhile as part of that tithe. That any of their financial giving to things like cancer research, to World Hunger, like World Vision and things like that, they'll consider that part of their tithe. So they need to know why it's important, and they're going to want a better reason for tithing to the church other than that the Bible tells you to do it. They will want to know what the church is doing, that it is asking for an investment like that. Be prepared to answer questions about finances when talking to young adults about giving. I have had more young adult families actually offer to underwrite ministries than any other age group. They get very invested in specific ministries again. But be ready to justify why you do what you do and how it is making an impact in your community. They want to make an impact. This is about retelling the narrative of your congregation as a missional church. What are you doing to be the hands and feet of Christ in your community? They want to know what you're doing. If you're having a hard time coming up with an answer to that, There might be some deeper issues in your congregation than just about the absence of young adults. Any questions around the ideas of giving with young adults? Again, they're generous. They want to be generous, but they are looking for mission and for purpose behind their giving. Okay. Besides money, the other important thing to know about young adults is that they crave community. I see this in my college students, and I can give you some quotes from a few of them around this, but I've heard a few people in churches talk about how they see their church friends on Sunday, and this is the main argument I hear with regards in like changes to service times and fellowship times and things like that. Well, if we change those, I won't get to see my church friends. And the question a lot of young adults ask about things like that is, why do you have church friends and then other friends? This is not the type of community that young adults are looking for. They are looking for a community to do life with. They do not want to just see people one day a week. They want people to invest in their lives, and they want to invest in the lives of others. And this is why sports and schools and scouts and all kinds of other organizations are getting the attention of young adults. These organizations demand commitment. And when you get involved in organizations like that, they see the same people a lot, and they invest in those people. For all the talk about how young people are more antisocial than any other group, I really don't think that's true. I think they're more social. They just go about it in different ways. I talked to some of my college students about this. Many of my students do not attend church on Sunday morning while they're here at NKU. And I think it's mainly because we have our church service on Wednesday evenings. We do a full church service with sermon and communion every week. But they also come to our space and they study here together. And a few of them work out and go to the gym together. We go to a local mission to serve once a week. We have 2 Bible study times each week. We have pickup basketball each week. We do fun events like we've gone snow tubing and stuff like that. And we do a retreat and a mission trip every year. We do life together on a college campus. And there's this Facebook group chat that's been going solid for over a year now. And they talk about everything under the sun in there. And they ask for prayer for job interviews, for family situations, and everything. Every single new person that walks through our door is added to that group chat and immediately included in the discussion. These guys have created a community up here. They feel supported. They feel valued. They feel like they have grown in their faith over their years at NKU. And I know this is another thing that's going to be kind of hard to hear, but they have said that they have felt disappointed in their churches at what their churches consider community. They want that closeness and that challenge to grow in their faith, but they also want to feel like their churches do support them in their faith journey. We're in a different situation here at a college campus, but I would keep this in mind when looking into doing small groups for young adults. They want people that they can do life with and who will walk with them through faith. I've seen this happen with Sunday school classes, with young adult Sunday school classes, that they plan to go to ball games together. They'll do Sunday school together. They go to lunch together. They watch each other's kids. They want community. And if they don't find it in the church, they will go somewhere else to get it. At annual conference a couple years back, Adam Hamilton talked about how most young adults are now brought into the church through mission or through some type of social small group, and then they are discipled. And I think there's a lot of truth in that statement. They are looking for a group to do life with, and it is anything but superficial. Young adults are attracted to something that is a force for good. They are willing to go deeper in faith when they understand the motives for doing that good. So be willing to live and work with them for a little while before they come to a point to profess faith. Which leads me kind of to my final point about ministering with young adults. Kind of their theology and their ecclesiology, their thoughts about God and about the church in general. One of the greatest challenges facing the church with this demographic is their general attitude toward church. About 40, 50-ish years ago, we had a lot of people who decided that they were done with religion because of several things. One thing that I hear quoted a lot, and we could argue about whether it's true or not, but because of what they felt was kind of the hypocritical attitude of Christians. And so they walked away from the church, and we kind of let them. The young adults of today are the kids of those people who left the church with a bad taste in their mouths. So they did not raise their children, they did not raise this generation with a positive view toward church or the attitude that church was relevant or necessary. They were raised with the narrative that church people are kind of two-faced and that they don't practice what they preach and all those other kind of stereotypes and preconceived notions that we hear a lot about. I've heard a lot of college students kind of parrot that stuff back to me. They genuinely believe it. In talking to college students, again, they have a lot of stereotypes about the church, kind of as busybodies, as hypocrites, as the Sunday-only Christians, and this is why building genuine relationships with young adults is so crucial. The church of 40, 50 years ago really hurt the church of today, and we're in a way doing damage control. But it is possible, and again, relationships that are genuine really are crucial, and it can overcome a lot of hurt that has happened in the past. Now, even with a bad idea of church in their minds, most young adults that I know are very interested in Jesus. They like Jesus. They like what he said. They like how he dealt with people. They like his teachings. They want to talk about Jesus and talk about what it means to live like Jesus, which is why they don't have a lot of patience with churches that they don't feel live into Jesus's teachings. They also get their feeling of community from Jesus. I've heard my college students, my young adults talk about this. Jesus lived with his disciples. They shared. They held each other accountable. They did life together. The early church did the same. Young adults like that. So when we get together for an hour on Sunday mornings and then we kind of don't live into the rest of what Jesus was doing, that's where young adults kind of tend to lose patience with the church right now. They are also not afraid to ask hard questions. I'm going to interrupt real quick. Mark asked, do they accept Jesus as the Son of God? I would say those who grew up around church people or kind of grew up in the church, definitely yes. The ones who did not so much are kind of iffy about the faith thing. That they're willing to talk about it. They're willing to talk about that idea, but I don't know how much they just on their own come around to that. Which is where again the church community comes into that of talking to them about the faith side of the life of Jesus, and the order of salvation, that we accept that Jesus died for our sins and to help us overcome the power of sin. That's where the church community needs to come in and fill that in, because I tend to find that these folks are pretty Bible savvy. I'm trying to think of the word that I don't know what word I'm trying to think of here, but not so much. I don't want to say doctrine. Doctrine isn't the right word. But I hope you're kind of understanding the gist that I'm getting at. They're not going to come around to the idea of Jesus as the Son of God on their own. That's where the church needs to come in. And now I do think that they're open to hearing that. I think that they're open to coming into that relationship with Jesus Christ. And they're open to the reality of him being the Savior that died for our sins, but I don't think they're going to come around to that on their own. Does that make sense? I kind of feel like I ramble sometimes, and maybe I don't make sense. But I would say that they're open to talking about it, but they're not going to come around to that on their own, which again is where they feel community is so important to walk with them through that journey. Okay, good. Sometimes I feel like I'm confusing people. So yeah, young adults, they are also very interested. One of the things that I've noticed with my college students, kind of talking about the faith side of living as a disciple of Jesus Christ, is they are very interested and very hungry to know what that looks like, to go about their daily lives with the heart of Christ. That they want to know what it looks like. They like Jesus. And they're very interested in how they go about living out, living their daily lives with the heart of Christ in them. Any other questions kind of so far around that? We're getting down to the end of our time, but we might end up going a little bit over. So to kind of wrap this up, a few suggestions for doing ministry with young people. And again, as Tammy said earlier, notice that we say with young people, not to them. We want to invite our young people into the life of our church and invite them. Oh, sorry, I missed that slide there. I also didn't capitalize Jesus. I apologize for that. But a couple of suggestions for doing ministry with young people. A few things that you can do with little or no expense to your congregation. First of all, you really do need to get to know your area. If you have someone who really wants to start a college ministry, but you don't have any college students in your area, that's probably not the best place to put your energy. And you will be setting people up for a lot of heartache and disappointment because there are no people of your target demographic anywhere near your church. Work with what you have. Work with what you have. One way you can look at what's going on in your area is to look at the United States Census data. That statistical information is public. It is free to access, and you can search by zip code and get a demographic overlook of your area. They will tell you how many people in certain age ranges, races, people with children, etc. How the statistics of who lives in your area. So you can get a snapshot of your zip code right there. But another way to get to know your area is to get out and figure out where people are congregating. I see Tammy's typing a question, so I'm going to go kind of slow here for a second. So where do young adults hang out? Do they frequent local coffee shops? Coffee shops are big up here, so that's why that's my example. But is there... Oh, thank you. Mission Insight, also a good resource for context in your community. Thank you, Tammy. Do they frequent local coffee shops? Is there a community center where families gather? Where do people go for community in your area? And once you figure that out, start maintaining a presence there. Like I said earlier, I rarely work in my office. Why? Because people don't naturally stop by my office. If people are not coming into your church, you need to go to them. Get out of your church building for events, partner with businesses and events in your area for outreach ideas. Start holding a church Bible study in your local diner. Make yourself visible to the community. And this kind of goes back to what I said, that they're really actually kind of anxious and eager to talk about faith and the church and how this all ties into life. When I've been in the coffee shop before, I've had people interrupt me while I'm working because they see my books and they start asking me questions. If somebody interrupts you, for the love of God, please talk to them. They're hungry to know. They're hungry to know what the whole faith thing is about, because again, you're in a group of people that fewer and fewer of them have grown up in church, and so the concept of faith is kind of a strange one to them, and they really are curious and want to know about what it is about faith. About knowing Jesus Christ as your Savior that attracts people. They really are interested in knowing why that is. So make yourself visible to the community. Eat with these people. Chat with them. Work with them. Again, this is something that they said Jesus did. This was Jesus's way of doing things, and they are very interested in churches that do things the way that Jesus did. Another thing, can I just say, invite them to church? It sounds so simple, but I cannot stress this enough. In the first 2 churches I pastored, hardly any of the congregants invited people to come to church with them. But do you know who did invite their friends and their neighbors? Were the youth in our youth group. And they came because they knew someone at church. I cannot stress the importance and the simplicity of this small act of evangelism. And I know it's something that a lot of people don't really think about anymore. Invite people that you personally know to come to church with you. And these new friends that you're going to make in your community, invite them to church. Many young adults will not simply walk into a new place on their own because they don't know that community. They don't know if they're welcome in that community. Be ready for them when they get there and invite them in. I would really suggest Sunday school or small groups for young adults. And yes, this will require a leader to start up. But if you do your job right, the leader will be able to pass the group off to someone else once it gets going if they really want to. Something I will suggest with these small groups, especially if you call them young adult small groups, and this is going to sound silly, But I had a few people at one of my churches try to hone in on the young adult group because they felt young. Be gentle, but be firm. Please don't let your young adults get chased off because some of your people want to feel young and cool. Okay? It's a balancing act. You've got to find what works best for your church, but remember that young adults are looking for people to do life with. They're looking to be in this for the long haul. The Wesleyan roots in home churches really resonates with a lot of young adults I know. Because again, it's all about that group of people who learn and grow together. Discipleship groups are crazy effective with younger people. That's the type of community that they're looking for. And it's not a replacement for church. I see you typing, Mark, so I'm going to kind of slow down a little bit here again. It's not a replacement for church, but this is where a lot of our current language for like accountability groups for our clergy and laity leaders comes from. It's meant to add to your spiritual growth. A home group kind of model could really add a lot to your young adult ministry, but also be prepared to meet at weird times because their scheduler years, or their schedules are weird. Does the term Sunday school turn young adults off? Yes and no. I'm not a fan of the hip kind of names. I know some people who think that that's really cool and really clever, but I think in any type of group that you're going to create, I really don't think that the name is as important. Is that are you actually doing discipling in that group? I would say I think there's kind of a trend to calling them more like Sunday small groups and stuff like that on Sunday mornings. But I really have kind of met a mix of people who think that Sunday school is like really old-fashioned, and some people who are just completely fine with it because they're like, oh, it's your Sunday class, to learn more about the Bible and learn about God. So they're kind of okay with that term. So I would say kind of yes and no on that one. Ooh, Brandon, you have a long question here. For small groups, how do we manage forced community versus organic community? Good question. So what I would suggest doing, so if you have like a couple, and I hope this is kind of the gist of the question that I'm getting here. So the question is kind of when a church only has a few to start a ministry or group, is it best to get them together to meet and hope that everyone kind of gets along, or to wait for those groups to form themselves? I can answer this in the perspective that I've seen with the college, is that for worship and everything, and Bible study, we all are together, but then kind of like the real, there are going to be people who are going to be a little bit closer and who are just going to get along better. That's just human nature, and they will end up kind of grouping off by themselves to do other stuff. But I would say for things like accountability groups, if you're looking for like a home church model and everything like that, absolutely, just get them together. Just go ahead and get them all together. And if you have serious conflicts between some of your young adults, that might be something to mediate. But I really feel like for the most part, they're fine with getting in a room full of strangers and just being forced to meet new people. I see it with my college students a lot. They're completely open to the idea of new people coming in and just instantly assimilating them into this group and giving them just a place to belong. So I hope that kind of answers your question, but I would say I would absolutely be for a church just getting a group together, saying this is what time we're going to meet, and this is what we're going to do, and start things off that way. And then if there are like some interest groups that want to splinter off, just kind of go with it and see what happens. Again, it's all really about knowing your community and knowing your people, and kind of again letting them shape what kind of discipleship group they're looking for. That's the best I can answer that. But again, I would say absolutely, I would get them together and kind of force the start of that community, and then see what happens from there. Did that make sense?
Hi.
Okay, good.
So great question. Go ahead.
Sometimes you do have to force young adults to do things
I was going to
because they
say
get
we had.
busy, and it's really easy for them to just get too busy.
So, Renee, you
Hi,
have
Tammy.
given us a lot to think about, and certainly have just a
Um,
wonderful grasp
no, go ahead.
of our young adults
I know it's
and
8
kind of
o'clock.
what
We're
they
out
are
of time.
thinking and who they are. And so I know, especially your heart is for college students, and even if um, even if your church has the opportunity, I mean, even if they don't have, even if your church doesn't have young adults in it right now, but there are kids who've grown up in your church and or grandkids, especially reaching out to them while they are in college is huge. I think we've all been there where we've gone to the student post office and nothing is in our mailbox, and oh, how disheartening that is. And I think they still like to get
Mm-hmm.
snail mail and packages in the mail and all those things that just say we love you, we care about you, we're thinking about you, and just make sure that they know that. Yes.
That was actually going to be my last point. And like with your youth and your college students, stay in touch with them.
Absolutely.
They appreciate it way more than you know. My mom's Sunday school class actually used to
Yes.
send me care packages when I was in college, and they would send like bags of candy and everything to share with the dorm. And my dorm got really excited when they saw me walk in with a box
It's
because
a
they
great
knew that
idea
my church
that
had
a
just sent
church,
them something really
one of
awesome.
our home
So
churches
I cannot
has
stress enough
done
how
with their
important it
college
is to please
ministry
stay in touch with your
is
college
they
students.
have secret
Get their
pals.
addresses, send
And
them
so they
cards.
have
It doesn't
someone
have to be
who
anything
from
really
the
big or
church
fancy, but
sends
stay in touch with
notes
them.
and care packages and things all during the year. And then they have this big reveal for lunch, once all the semester's over in the spring, and it's kind of a welcome home. Or people even drive home in order to see who this secret pal has been. And so they've kind of made that, a big deal, and it's just a part of their culture and who they are. And so, there's just a lot of creative things that we can do to be in ministry with our young adults. And so, Renee, thank you so much for sharing with us. And I know you are available. You put your information up here, and I can help you get in touch with Renee as well if you need to. She is a great resource, as well as several of our other campus
You're very
ministers as
welcome.
well, and hope to share some of them with you
Mm-hmm.
in the time in the months and years to come as well. So, Renee, thank y'all all for joining us tonight, and may God be with you. And next week we will have Mark Gibbons, who is going to try to unravel this whole United Methodist structure and the systems and how we are formed and all that kind of good stuff. And so, anyway, be sure and join us for that session as well. And until we meet again, God bless you and uh, challenge you and encourage you in